Subscribe because it's free.
For 6 centuries, the war had raged. The VA-30 Empire and the Zenith Dominion, 2 of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, had thrown everything they had at each other. Planet-cracking weaponry, fleets numbering the millions, bioengineered super soldiers. Nothing changed. Every battle ended in a stalemate. Every victory immediately undone by a counterstrike. Entire star systems have been reduced to ash, yet neither side would surrender. Both factions had long since abandoned conventional tactics. Artificial intelligence now dictated warfare, each battle calculated down to mathematical precision. Every move, every countermeasure, had been anticipated and simulated 1,000 times over. And so the war dragged on, a cycle of destruction with no end. Desperation crept in. Resources were stretched thin. Homeworlds suffocated under the weight of war economies. For the first time in centuries, both factions considered the unthinkable negotiation. A clandestine meeting was arranged, deep within neutral space, far from the front lines. The war's highest commanders, figures who had never before sat in the same room, without trying to kill each other, gathered at a massive station orbiting a dead star. Then humanity arrived. No one had invited them. No one had even considered them relevant. By galactic standards, humanity was a minor race, young, technologically behind, barely scratching the surface of interstellar expansion. They held no significant territories, fielded no vast fleets. And yet, the human envoy, a single individual named Commander Elias Ward, walked into that meeting with the confidence of a species that had already decided the outcome. The assembled leaders of the VA-30 and Zenith barely acknowledged him at first. The room was filled with beings who had waged war for generations. War was an anomaly, unassuming, calm, and disturbingly self-assured. When he spoke, it was without hesitation. "We know you're losing," he said. "Both of you. 600 years, trillions dead, and you're no closer to victory than when you started. But we can end it. Give us 1 fleet, 1 battle, 5 hours. That's all we need." Laughter filled the room. Humanity had never fought in this war, had never proven itself on a galactic scale. The thought of a primitive species achieving what 2 superpowers could not was absurd. The Zenith High general leaned forward, voice thick with condescension. "And what, exactly, do you believe you can accomplish in 5 hours that we haven't in 6 centuries?" Ward didn't smile. He didn't try to convince them. He simply leaned back and stated the offer again. "Give us a fleet. Give us a battle. If we fail, we leave. If we succeed, the war ends." The VA-30 Supreme Warlord sneered. "And if you betray us?" Ward shrugged. "Then you'll kill us. But that won't happen." The arrogance was infuriating. The assembled warlord should have thrown him out, ignored him, continued the war as they always had. And yet, something about him, about the unwavering certainty in his voice, made them hesitate. Perhaps it was desperation, perhaps curiosity, but in the end they agreed. A single fleet was given, old ships, outdated weapons, vessels barely functional, cannon fodder. If humanity wanted to die in their war, so be it. The battle would take place over Veldar 9, a system drenched in the wreckage of centuries. The factions watched from a distance, expecting humanity to be obliterated in minutes. None of them knew what was about to happen. The human fleet arrived at Veldar 9 with no ceremony, no formal battle formations, no posturing. The VA-30 and Zenith commanders observed from their respective flagships, expecting the usual procedures: initial scans, strategic positioning, preliminary exchanges of fire. Instead, humanity attacked immediately. No warnings, no formations, no hesitation. Within seconds of arrival, the human fleet executed a micro-jump, vanishing from their entry coordinates and reappearing behind the Zenith's main battle line. Before the AI-driven defense systems could adjust, humanity opened fire. But it wasn't conventional warfare. Their ships didn't engage in long-range exchanges or predictable formations. They moved erratically, darting in and out of sensor range, attacking at angles no war simulation had ever predicted. Zenith ships exploded in rapid succession. The VA-30 commanders, watching from their own observation decks, were stunned. In less than 15 minutes, humanity had inflicted more damage than entire campaigns had in years. Then the jamming began. The Zenith's AI-reliant fleet suddenly went blind. Their targeting system scrambled. Their sensor grids fed them false data. Their own ships began reading as hostile. The VA theory, expecting to witness a human massacre, instead watched the unthinkable. The Zenith fleet started firing on itself. Panic spread. This wasn't a conventional EMP strike or hacking attempt. Humanity's electronic warfare was something entirely different. They didn't just disable systems, they hijacked them. VA theory warlords whispered among themselves, realizing that humanity wasn't just fighting a battle, they were rewriting the battlefield itself. Meanwhile, the human fleet was still moving, never staying in one place for more than seconds, shifting through micro jumps in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Then came the psychological warfare. Across every open channel, distress calls flooded the airwaves, not from humanity, but from within the Zenith fleet. Desperate cries for help, reports of ships under attack that weren't even in combat, conflicting orders, false retreats, chaos. Humanity had weaponized deception itself. The VA theory commanders, despite themselves, felt a chill. The Zenith were a brutal species, feared across the galaxy, and yet, within the first 2 hours, their fleet was collapsing. Still, the Zenith fought back, tried to regroup, trying to predict human movements. It was useless. Every time they adjusted their strategies, humanity had already adapted. Their ships fought like living creatures, coordinating in real time, responding to battlefield changes faster than any AI. And then the final blow. The Zenith attempted a tactical retreat, calling for reinforcements. Humanity was ready. Using hijacked enemy codes, they redirected the Zenith's retreat coordinates, warping entire divisions into dead zones, asteroid fields, even straight into the Vitheri's own ambush lines. The Zenith commanders, overwhelmed and leaderless, realized too late that they had never controlled this battle to begin with. The VA theory's supreme warlord, watching from his observation deck, turned to his advisors in stunned silence. Humanity had done in 2 hours what neither side had done in 6 centuries. And the battle was far from over. The war had turned. What began as an experiment, a chance to watch humanity fail, had become something else entirely. The Zenith fleet, once a relentless force, was now in complete disarray. Their ships burned, their command structure shattered. The VA theory, watching from the sidelines, should have been celebrating. Instead, they felt something they hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Humanity was not fighting like any species they had ever encountered. The VA theory had expected tactical strikes, strategic victories, maybe even an impressive show of force. Instead, they witnessed systematic annihilation. The Zenith attempted to retreat in full, abandoning the battlefield to regroup. Humanity didn't let them. Across the war zone, ships tried to activate their warp drives, only to find their coordinates had been hijacked. Entire squadrons jumped blindly, expecting safety, only to emerge into black holes, minefields, or planetary debris. Those that stayed behind faced something worse. The Zenith fleet had always relied on its massive war machines, dreadnoughts built to withstand entire sieges, programmed to calculate every possible outcome. Those calculations failed the moment they faced humanity. A Zenith battleship, bristling with armor and firepower, found itself disabled in seconds. Humanity had sent a single fighter squadron, piloted by what should have been insignificant soldiers. Instead of a direct assault, the pilots exploited blind spots AI systems had never considered. They moved in ways no algorithm could predict, targeting exposed fuel lines, precise weak points, shutting down ships not by overpowering them, but by outthinking them. It wasn't brute force. It wasn't superior firepower. It was surgical destruction. The VA theory watched in horror. The Zenith had been formidable, a feared rival for centuries. And yet, against humanity, they looked like prey. Then the unthinkable happened. The Zenith's supreme commander, the warlord who had orchestrated 6 centuries of battle, attempted to surrender. His transmission was broadcast across the battlefield, a desperate plea for mercy. Humanity ignored it. The remaining Zenith dreadnoughts, without leadership, turned to the VA Theory fleet for aid. The VA Theory Supreme Warlord hesitated. This was their greatest enemy, their oldest foe, and yet, watching them beg, watching humanity erase them as if they were nothing, made the VA Theory realize the truth. They were next. Humanity was not here to pick sides. They were here to end the war. Within 4 hours, 90% of the Zenith forces were gone. What remained of the VA Theory and Zenith Command watched from their safe distances. Their once invincible fleets reduced to ruins and corpses. The war they had fought for centuries was no longer in their control, and they knew with absolute certainty that if they tried to resist, humanity would do the same to them. The battlefield was silent. Where once the war had raged endlessly, now only burning wreckage remained. The Zenith were no more. Their last ships had either been destroyed, captured, or sent spiraling into the void, never to return. The VA Theory, once eager spectators, were paralyzed with the weight of realization. Humanity had done exactly what they promised. 5 hours, one battle, a war that spanned 6 centuries, ended. A transmission cut through the silence. It was Commander Elias Ward. His voice was calm, measured, the same unshakable certainty as before. "It's over," he said. "The war is done. You will not restart it." The VA Theory Supreme Warlord stiffened. A threat? No, a warning. For the first time, the VA Theory truly understood what they had allowed into their war. Humanity had not fought to win. They had fought to erase the possibility of war itself. The warlords debated among themselves, their voices edged with uncertainty. What could they do? Fight? Impossible. Their fleets, while intact, were already compromised. Humanity had infiltrated their systems. They had rewritten the very rules of war. One very admiral, still clinging to arrogance, dared to ask, "And if we refuse?" There was no hesitation in Ward's response. "Then we do to you what we did to them." The weight of his words settled like a crushing force. The warlords fell silent. Even the most battle-hardened among them knew this was not a bluff. The way humanity had fought, the way they had dismantled the Zenith, was not an act of desperation. It was practice. A chilling realization spread through the VA Theory ranks. Humanity had never been weak. They had never been behind. They had been waiting, watching, learning. The only reason humanity had not entered the war before was because they had not needed to, until now. And in the span of 5 hours, they had proven the truth. This was no longer a war. It was an execution. The VA Theory Supreme Warlord took a slow breath. He had spent centuries fighting, conquering, leading his people through the fires of war. And now, in a single battle, he was being given a choice, surrender or extinction. There was no decision to make. The war ended that day, not with a treaty, not with negotiations. It ended with a single statement from Commander Ward. "You will not fight again, not against each other, not against us. War is over." And just like that, humanity left. No occupation, no demands. Only a message burned into the minds of the galaxy. If humanity ever entered a war, it would not last. It would end, and so would anyone who stood against them.